Breaking news this hour, officials say multimillionaire Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life.
Jeffrey Epstein is dead.
Breaking news right now. Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life while he was behind bars here in New York City. Epstein was
facing fresh charges of sex trafficking and a possible sentence of 45 years. Jeffrey Epstein had at one stage been placed on suicide watch inside the Manhattan Correctional Centre. But early this morning, he was found dead in his cell.
I don't wish suicide on anyone. I don't gloat upon anyone's death. But I will tell victims, at least you have one less thing to worry about now, because most victims were still in fear of him. Even with him in prison, they were afraid he could come after them in some way. Well, that's not going to happen now.
If you believe you are a victim of this man, Jeffrey Epstein, we want to hear from you.
The disgraced billionaire had been arrested a month ago and pleaded not guilty to charges of recruiting and abusing dozens of underage girls in the early 2000s. Prosecutors had raided his £65 million Manhattan mansion and found what they described as a trove of pictures of nude women and girls. Epstein had been arrested on similar charges in 2008 and admitted to prostituting minors, avoiding a more serious federal case. So after serving 13 months, he was released. But questions over that plea deal persisted, and so did the pursuit of justice from his accusers. Alexander Acosta was a federal prosecutor in Florida at the time. He'd since become Donald Trump's Labor secretary, but stepped down last month amid questions over how he'd handled the Epstein deal. President Trump knew Epstein. They'd moved in the same super-rich Manhattan power circles. He's not implicated in any allegations against him.
I haven't spoken to him in probably 15 years or more. I wasn't a big fan of Jeffrey Epstein, that I can tell you.
Epstein had socialised with the Duke of York in the past too. Yesterday, some 2,000 pages of legal documents were unsealed by a US judge in a defamation case involving a British woman who has denied allegations of supplying Epstein with underage girls. They contain an accusation that Prince Andrew had touched the breast of a young woman sitting on his lap who was said to have been 21 at Epstein's home in 2001. Buckingham Palace said the allegations are categorically untrue. Now he's dead. Jeffrey Epstein's accusers say they won't stop fighting. We have to live with the scars of his actions for the rest of our lives, while he will never face the consequences of the crimes he committed, the pain and trauma he caused so many people. Epstein is gone, but justice must still be served. I hope the authorities will pursue and prosecute his accomplices and enablers and ensure redress for his victims. Justice for them can no longer mean Epstein is tried and convicted, but it can still mean answers to questions they've been asking for decades.
Well, separate to the current charges against Epstein, one of his alleged victims, Virginia Roberts, also known as Virginia Giuffre, had once claimed she'd been forced into a sexual encounter with Prince Andrew. This has been denied in the past by the palace, but in the last half hour, they have issued a new statement emphatically denying that the prince had any form of sexual contact or relationship with Virginia Roberts. The allegation has resurfaced because of the release of court documents this week in a defamation case in the United States. Well, our reporter Danny Isdale joins me now from Washington. So what happens next?
Well, Krishnan, without a defendant, there can be no criminal trial, and Jeffrey Epstein is gone. We will never know what would have come out in those proceedings about him or about anyone else. What we can see now, though, will be investigations, and there'll be plenty of them. As you heard earlier, his accusers want investigations into, quote, his enablers and associates. And we've just received a statement from the US Attorney General William Barr, which reads in part, "I was appalled to learn that Jeffrey Epstein was found dead early this morning from an apparent suicide in federal custody. In addition to the FBI's investigations, I've consulted with the Inspector General, who's opening an investigation into the circumstances of Mr. Epstein's death." He wasn't under suicide watch at the time he killed himself, so that is where those questions will arise. Also questions that haven't gone away in decades about the leniency of that earlier case. This man is accused of being a predator, of trafficking young women and girls for many years. And what price has he paid? Well, nowhere near enough, according to his accusers. They didn't want him dead. They wanted him to face trial. They wanted him to face justice.